All right, welcome back to AM Live. I was just telling my panelists about Kericho Stadium, us accessing it on Mashujaa Day. Nilimecha story wapi? Oh yeah, but the thing which surprised me was that yes, there was a one access gate for everybody, the media, the national government, Ngao guys, and the CHPs, I told you, with their blue aprons and their red knapsacks. So that was gate C. Gate B was not in use, but we went because we stopped by gate B on our way to gate C, and then we are like, can we please use this access, because we are here anyway and there's nobody else here. Why not open up that gate? It didn't make sense for me, especially later when I found out that people had died. There had been a stampede. The stampede had happened less than 2 hours before we got there. Wow. So I'm like, after you've had a stampede, wouldn't you then put in place remedial measures to arrest the situation? Clearly, this is not working. Am I?
Yeah, true.
Anywho, to the topic at hand, political parties hygiene. Yeah, so we started with the Star front page. Their headline had to do with Azimio outrage over Sabina's new Jubilee job. This time we'll start from Kidi Mwaga's side. Kidi Mwaga, we saw, yes, Azimio got its way as far as Mark Mwenje and Bakassi West MP taking over the role of Deputy Minority Whip. But then Jubilee was recognized as a political parliamentary party.
Yes.
And so I had, what's his name? Kimani Ichung'wah joking on the floor of the House that she was a deputy minority whip on the other side. Now she's a substantive whip. Your thoughts? Do Azimio have cause for outrage?
I think even before we look at what Azimio would want out of this, let us look at what this does to our political party hygiene. Because only we must remember that political parties are the most important tools in nation building. And when I talk of nation building, I am not referring to state building. Nation building is where now people find how to express their political aspirations. State building, on the other hand, is usually about the administrative edifice that is, erected over the nation. So when we play small with our political parties, when we use them to serve short-term interests, when we use them to serve, ethnic interest in isolation, then it becomes a very sad scenario, because it makes it very difficult to then forge a nation out of this. Because you realize that every time we move into elections, we do not have parties that are institutionalized, but then we have special purpose vehicles whose only interest and only interest alone is capture of power, consolidation of power, and it is consolidation of power for power's sake, not because of what you are able to do with that power. So I think that, in my estimation, the Speaker should have been more magnanimous, and in being magnanimous here, recognizing that there was an Azimio coalition. Azimio as a coalition, if and when the Jubilee Party or the sections that within the Jubilee Party wanted to bolt out of the Jubilee, they should have followed the laid-down procedure. But then, so if they are still fighting within the party over who has the control of what, I think that the decent thing, even for people like Honorable Sabina, is that they recuse themselves from these positions of responsibility until the status of their party is heard, determined, and settled. That way, they demonstrate leadership. But when they're clinging on these positions, for power's sake, I think it reflects very bad, not only on the country, not only on themselves, but also on the country, because therefore, the country is unable to evolve its political institutions when it cannot evolve its own political parties to serve the interests of the people. Thank you.
All right. Jim, India, I just want to flip to page 4 and 5 of the Star, where the article is, but I did want to make mention of the editorial cartoon. Can we please take it full screen, because it is related? Jackson? Can you see it, Jackson? If I zoom any further, it will, yeah. Okay. There we go. We have, is that better? Yeah. We see Kawira Mwangaza, impeachment, Meru County, Sabina Chege, Deputy Whip. All right, but when we scroll further down to page 4 and 5 of the staff, Azimio demands Wetangula rescind recognition of Jubilee faction as parliamentary party, and Wetangula under fire over Sabina Chege's new Jubilee position. I see here Jeremiah Kioni accused Moses Wetangula in this image here of, he says, the speaker's action offends the spirit of multipartism, claiming his bias started with robbing Azimio of the majority status in parliament. Jim, in your view, has this been a conspiracy?
I think the speaker from the get-go, remember the speaker was a co-principal in the last election, yes. And he thunderously delivered votes to Kenya Kwanza, far beyond what anybody expected from him. And it is on that sort of foundation that he found himself as speaker. It is a bit it is wishful thinking to imagine that the speaker is impartial. He should be in an ideal situation, but I think the speaker has demonstrated that he is the gate. Formerly, you had, Eden Duale in the last parliament, who used to be the go-between parliament and the executive, but now the speaker has officially assumed that role, and he whips parliament accordingly, and a lot of his decisions have been questioned on matters of law. But you see, the thing about, and all these lawyers around here can tell us, is that you can argue with the law on a lot of technicalities. You can argue it from a lot of angles. Because right now people are saying that the law does not contemplate where you have a coalition party and then also you have the members of that coalition party being recognized as parliamentary parties. So you have Azimio as a coalition party, which Jubilee belongs to, and is recognized as a parliamentary party. Then now you have a situation where now even Jubilee is recognized as a parliamentary party, yet Jubilee has not gone through the process of formally withdrawing from the coalition. Yes. So
hey, I see the lawyers are like
I'm glad and they have not gone through the process of withdrawing from Azimio, and I think they know that that's a bit difficult. But what's the big deal with Jubilee? Jubilee has about 32 members of parliament. Of those 32, about 21 thereabout pledged allegiance to Kenya Kwanza. Those guys led by Sabina Chege and the rest of them. And so Azimio has about 11 Jubilee members of parliament who, if today Azimio called a parliamentary meeting, if we were to count how many Jubilee members would actually show up, you would be surprised. And so in that sense, Jubilee because it is the third largest party after UDA, ODM, Jubilee. And so you have made sure that you scuttled this Jubilee, and this scuttle will go on for the next 5 years. Because if anyone is able to consolidate the 32 members of Jubilee and move them either way as a unit, then that individual has enough sway and controls enough of what goes on in parliament. So for me, I think it is a long conspiracy to actually keep the opposition in check and help the government to run its affairs in parliament smoothly. Because why on earth would anyone want to cling, as Kidi was saying, cling to these positions and go to court and form NDC here and NDC there, kick out your youth chairman, kick out your women. You're constantly just throwing people out. It is because of the power that Jubilee holds. They would have been the power brokers, but they have sold that out. They have sold that power, and it is so sad that people who would have been so powerful have decided to sell away their power and have decided to be pocketed either by the opposition or by the government of the day. So you have these guys who, I'd rather all 32 of them would have decided to quit Azimio, and they quit Azimio and formally join UDA. You actually have a sense of working together. But remember, it is also in the context of a lot of what's going on at the central region, where you have Maina Njenga declaring that he's going to do a few things and is now a principal and not an ex-Mungiki leader, and is going to make a declaration in December. You have Rigiji, who's constantly holding milk meetings and coffee meetings. You then have Kamwene, where Amata Karua. So there's a lot that's going on. And that's the context that we need to appreciate.
And a birthday yesterday.
A birthday yesterday, you have people who are now wearing military, regalia and salutes and inspecting parades. Yes. So at the end of the day, if you look at what's going on in Jubilee, look at it in the context with what's going on at the mountain, and realize there's a serious struggle for power.
All right. Nudin Hagai, the reason Azimio has taken issue with the decision to recognize Jubilee as a parliamentary party, and I quote here, the minority leader, Opio Wandai, who is quoted in this Star article, Article 108 of the Constitution, read together with Standing Order 21A, does not contemplate a situation where a political party can belong into a coalition and at the same time enjoy the status of a stand-alone parliamentary party in the National Assembly. It is our view that any attempt to recognize the Jubilee Party as a parliamentary party under the present circumstances is not only ill-advised, but also a brazen contravention of the Constitution and the law. Such a move would be an affront to the rule of law and multi-party democracy.
You see, the sad reality is that the actions from a speaker yesterday, or as they call him, Papa Waroma, is that, I think, he once said it will be noisy.
It was on Wednesday?
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Wednesday.
He says, there's one time he told us it will be messy, noisy, with casualties. So I think he likes a messy scenario. Now, let me tell you why. Because you see, Jubilee is still in court. They still don't know who's their party leader between Sabina Chege and Uhuru Kenyatta. So they have Jubilee A and B in one party. Number two, now what he has done by giving Mwenje the seat Sabina had, and now declaring Sabina the whip of Jubilee, in essence means Jubilee is an independent party, not in any coalition. So the question is, we go back now, Jubilee doesn't have a member in the Parliamentary Service Commission. So will they seek to have a member there? I'm sure that is where Sabina is going. Because this other seat has been taken by Mwenje, she'd want to go there. Because she sees herself as the party leader. Now, the next question is, all this confusion, how does the speaker gain? Because they're going to have a confused house. You will have Jubilee A speaking, Jubilee speaking, B speaking. So at the end of the day, you find a scenario where we were talking about the independence of that institution. Before he declared whatever he declared on Wednesday, there was a tussle. There was a time he didn't want to do it. And that tells you, obviously, he was receiving instruction from somewhere. The sad reality, as he rightfully said, unless you live under a rock, he's never going to be impartial. And you can see it in how the affairs have been run. And that is why we ask ourselves, what happened to, you remember how Marende was? We once had an instance where people were fighting for the leader of government business between Kalonzo Musyoka and Raila Odinga. And he made sure none of them got it. So at the end of the day, you have to rise above some other things. Because if you're going to spearhead or run a divided house, what does that tell us as the electorate? Because at the end of the day, if Parliament is there to do the beating of the executive, then we are doomed. Okay. Nobody will question, actually rightfully said, things like the travels. Nobody will question bills that come into the House that are more or less to serve the interests of the executive. If today, I'm not saying it will happen, if today the executive, courtesy of terror of number, they wake up and they decide, you know what, the fact that everybody has two hands in this country, we don't like it, people have to have one hand. And they legislate on that, and because they have to remember, it passes. You see, those are things you have to put in check, because we know for sure those under Kenya Kwanza, for them the word oversight, either they can't read it, they can't comprehend it, or they will be alluded to the fact that it doesn't make sense to them, and so they look at Azimio. So those in Azimio, as he rightfully says, like Jubilee has 11, and the remaining, because we see night meetings, as I rightfully told you, we've seen the latest photos of those who have been to State House. That is a transfer season. We're just waiting for Fabrizio Romano to tell us, here we go, sadly. So at the end of the day, and that is more or less about our political parties. You see, Article 38 talks about political rights, the right to form, participate in a political party. It gives you, as an individual, a right to even run for office, like what we're seeing UDA trying to do. Because those parties are funded by taxpayers' money. So you have a right in that political party. But sadly, our political parties are institutions. They are owned by certain individuals. And those political parties, most of the time, don't have an ideology. They are built to capture power. And once they do, they give fake promises. And once they realize we won't achieve them, they rebrand.
Do they all give fake promises?
Listen, they rebrand courtesy of euphoria. You see a new party, you all run towards it. Whatever you are told, laptops, an entire government left. I didn't think we've seen them. Whatever you're told by this party, they see an election coming, they rebrand and they move. And that is a sad reality. We don't have institutions in that we don't know what they stand for. It's just to capture power. And once they capture power, they start fighting. Now we are being told, allegedly, we don't know if it's true, there's some wrangles in UDA, which is normal because there are those who feel we need to own more, they need to own less, and that is the sad reality. So we wait to see if it will change, or it will become bigger, or the UDA will turn its name. Because at the end of the day, we don't see these parties having a succession. Because I'll give you an example. PNU was there courtesy of Kibaki. He left office, it died. Jubilee, you see, by the time they finally decide on this party, it will be long gone. It won't be the Jubilee we saw launching Prados on Thika Road that one time. Everybody was amazed. Is the Prados and talk about people? I remember even parliamentarians were asking from ODM, where do you get this money to have all these Prados? You get. So the sad reality is that if, for example, UDA ends up finishing its term, the next person, whoever runs, will not run under UDA. So that speaks about our political parties and them not being institutions with no ideology. And that is why you are elected in Party X, and then after assuming office, you realize, by the way, I belong here. That speaks volumes about our leaders as well. Because someone will tell you, yes, I'm in Party X, but I'm working with the government. What does that mean? So where does your oversight role come in? Where does checks and balances come in? You know, I'm working with the government to get you development. That is my right. I pay taxes at the end of the day. You appropriate budget in your house, in parliament. So what do you mean you're going to State House to kneel down for a road in my area? It doesn't make sense. And that is why I said most of these leaders don't even understand the scope of their duties. So you have an entire scenario where everyone is confused and everyone wants to get a certain interest solved. And that is why people transverse from Party X to Y. You are in Party X during the day. At night, you're in Party Y. Okay. And that is a sad reality about our political parties. That's why people say political prostitution. And now I see Martha Koome wants to make it legit.
Wait, baby, usiguze huko. Gashui, don't land us in more hot water. Gashui, who's dropped the ball? This confusion, I believe we've been using the phrase jumble in Jubilee. I'll have to Google the definition. But who dropped the ball? Why are we where we are?
I think to a large extent, Wetangula is to blame in this one, as the Speaker of the National Assembly. As he'd cited, Kenneth Marende at one point was the Speaker, and there's a choice he made between Raila Odinga and I think, who was it? Kalonzo Musyoka. Very Solomonic. And Wetangula had a good opportunity, especially as a seasoned politician, a man of his staff, a man known to... And an advocate of the high court. Who was once a magistrate, by the way. Who was once a magistrate, if I'm not wrong. Okay? So he had a good opportunity of being able to bring this hula-baloo or this conflict that seems to be brewing within the Jubilee Party to an end in a way that, one, fosters democracy, and two, ensures separation of powers. So Nurdin asked a very important question. Who exactly gains from this? Who gains from this hula-baloo? And I think it was Jim who talked about Jubilee had a very, very critical role to play as a parliamentary caucus if they chose to either side with Kenya Kwanza or Azimio, but as a bloc, just remain as a bloc as they were. So who exactly gains from this? So in my opinion, I think Wetangula, unfortunately, failed in his role. He overstepped to a certain extent because, first of all, he cannot be making that kind of decision without an application or a motion coming before him. But he did this of his own volition and created such a confused scenario where we already have a coalition party known as Azimio, but then now you are creating an offshoot on the side, an independent entity, a parliamentary party that is still legitimately within a coalition party. Where does that leave us? So, squarely, Mr. Speaker.
Maybe the issue is according to whom are they still in Azimio? Anyway, this is what Murathe said. The people...
Yes, I wanted to say that in a politically sedate environment and in the interest of the country, I think it is incumbent upon the Speaker to make sure that his ruling moves the country towards, having institutionalized political parties as opposed to these parties being turned into political vibandas. Because what is the implication of that decision by the Speaker is clearly is that there is mischief into it. Okay, personally I'm reading mischief into it.
In your view?
Because what then would happen is that therefore PSC would then swing in motion and then start facilitating the office of Sabina Chege. When that happens, then it means that then the fourth largest party in parliament then should be accorded the same status, because it would be inequality to treat equals unequally. Yes.
Okay. I was going to quote Murathe. Yes. He stated, those people who are given committee positions, so we have Sabina on one hand. Now he's saying those people who are given committee positions were given them courtesy of Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya coalition. We have told our deputy minority whip to de-whip all those people from the committees. Let them be given committee seats within Kenya Kwanza. Kidi Mwaga, there is a, who Nudini talked of Jubilee A and B, I think. I refer to them as Jubilee Kenya.
And Jubilee Asili.
And Jubilee Asili.
Yes.
So this thing has been taken to the political parties tribe. The registrar of political parties was asked to change the names of the officials, I think.
Yes.
It was taken to the political parties disputes tribunal. I think it even has been to the High Court. Yes. I mean, there is no...
Expected to
everybody has conservatory orders.
Yes. Expected to possibly move to the Supreme Court. And because, Olive, I mean, it goes back to what I'm saying. And I think before we look at the legal framework and the legal implication and how it is going to pan out, let us ask ourselves that where did this ghost start haunting us from? And you realize that this ghost of having political parties that are, ethnic enclaves, and now that the king is coming, is that it traces back into the colonial legacy. When the colonial government tells those Africans who are agitating for independence that, yeah, you can form a political party, but make sure it is only within your district, so that you have the Nairobi People's Union of Tom Mboya. Then there was the other one by Arguing Skodek. You come to Nyanza, there was a political party for Nyanza. There was a political party for Coast Region. So that KANU was this first major attempt by the people of Kenya to form a national community. But then that project national community fell asunder in 1966. But then we have failed from 1966 to date to, re-engineer ourselves as a people and use our political parties to form a national community. Because every time we go into the elections, we quickly disintegrate depending on our ethnic persuasions and ethnic interests. And when I say our ethnic interest, I mean the interest of the ethnic elites. So for instance, we have NAC. And NAC is this large behemoth formed by disparate interests whose point of convergence is removal of Moi from power. But then the moment they quickly come in, the ethnic interest drives them asunder. So there is this feeling of, the LDP and quote-unquote the Luo, feeling that they have not been given their fair share in that government. And then they move out. Of course, there is a little tiff within the NAC government, then they pull out. When ODM comes onto the stage in 2007, it brings together a large section of the people of Kenya. But quickly, in 2008, 2009, ODM has to grapple with what was called the headache of the Rift Valley MPs, where there was the current president, then Chepalungu MP Isaac Ruto, among others. So that we have not been able to address the interest of various ethnic communities within a single major party. And I think also it goes back to the legacy of KANU, and maybe KANU may have to take responsibility for this. That when President Moi comes into power, and he looks at the strength of what was then called Mount Kenya, the Gema community that had been around the president, realizes that they were very powerful. And then 1982 coup happens. He then forms up what was called the Kamatusa, the Kalenjin, Masai, Turkana, Samburu communities that were supposed to be what was called the KANU zones. And Raila Odinga says in his book, The Flame of Freedom, that when he became Secretary General, he realized that there were places he had not been able to previously visit because they had been deemed KANU zones, that he was only able to visit for the first time as a politician, as the Secretary General of KANU. So I think that, and then now the question is there hope? I think there is hope. And in my view, I think hope is in the fact that in last elections, we had a party that swept to power without necessarily anchoring its message on the ethnic identities. Because if you remember, the president was outnumbered and outgunned in terms of consolidation of ethnic elites. I think Azimio had more powerful ethnic elites than Kenya Kwanza. So until the Prime Cabinet Secretary and the Speaker joined him, that's when it seemed like, oh, he has a few people.
The earthquake.
Yeah, yes, the earthquake. So I think that it is because of what we have seen happening with PNU, now Jubilee. I think it is something that we must guard jealously not to happen to UDA. Why is it that? Why would we want UDA to stay for long? Is that then we begin to institutionalize political parties. We do not want the next president coming. I think in this panel we have presidential materials like my sister Gashui. I mean, it would be sad in 1932 when we have President Agnes Gashui trying 2032 when we have President Gashui trying to cannibalize UDA. And now, again, this is now a direct appeal to the UDA administration that already they have got what is called a majority. Other people have said that that majority was manufactured after the elections. But now they have a majority. I think they should let Jubilee survive so that we do not, people in power, it does not become a tradition that when someone is power, the next thing they do is destroy other political parties. That is my view. Thank you.
Jim, I don't know whether to transition to UDA now or Azimio. Let me see. But okay, before we get into UDA, is the problem not necessarily, does the problem not stem in Parliament or with Moses Wetangula, but rather within the political party setup itself? Is it that these are not democratic spaces, that they are owned? Is that the problem, that these political parties are owned by individuals? And the reason I ask that is because Monday's Taifa Leo had this on its front page: kwa nini tunahepa Raila, wataja udikteta, utumwa, hadaa, ghasia na kuaibishwa hadharani ndani ya ODM kama sababu kuu za kumkimbia kinara wao na kujiunga na muungano wa Kenya Kwanza. As much as these leaders come on public fora and espouse democracy, are they tyrants within their political parties? I
think those of you who were part of music festivals, there was something called solo verses, and then there was choral verses. Political parties don't like solo verses. They like choral. They like choruses. When you look at parliamentary group meetings, normally they're just two people who speak. You have 100 members of parliament, and they all just sit there. They are dressed down, dressed up, told good things, and then they're given a few breaks to go and see flamingos if they're in Lake Nakuru. They come back, another dress down, another dress up, and then they go back. The leaders speak. So our political parties are like that. Any solo voice, you sound very strange if you're not singing in unison with everyone else. And I liken political parties. Let me use even this, and guys have used different examples. Nganya, matatu. If you think about matatus, there's always, in any route, if you're talking about number 9 za kwenda zinaenda wapi, Asili, or you talk about gari za kwenda 58 za buruburu, there's always a brand new nganya. There's always the one that's in town, the one that's in season, the one that everybody wants to get into. It is loud, it is shiny, it is colorful, it has all the new stereo system. I mean, it is the in thing, and everybody wants to get in that nganya. And that's our political parties. That every now and again, in every region, there's like a new nganya that's in town, that everyone is talking about, and it's cool to get into it. And people will make long queues to get into that matatu. But over time, that matatu wears out, and a new one comes. Now, the drivers of these matatus, sometimes are the owners, sometimes they're not. But the drivers of these matatus don't take suggestions from passengers. You don't get in a matatu and you sit in the passengers and start telling the driver, tumia Ngong Road, tumia Wayaki Way. The driver has, punguza sauti ya radio. You know, no. When you get in a matatu, my friend, all you care about is that you get to where you're going. The drivers determine the destination. So the owners of these political parties feel like they have a right, because they have invested their money, they have invested their time into building these political parties. So the rest of you... Or buying. Some of you are actually beneficiaries of their sweat and toil. Some of you are elected just because you are in this matatu. If you are not in this matatu, you'd never see the floor of parliament. And so they have no business listening to you. You bring nothing to the table to them. Anyway, when they need you to vote for them in parliament, you don't even show up.
Hey, so Jim, the violence.
So what's the point of listening to your opinions? What's the point of listening? You can't even marshal your own constituency and hold a rally. You rely on them to come and hold your hand and say this one tosha. For people in your own constituency to listen to you. Your own MCA, in fact, has more grassroots support than you do as a member of parliament, as a senator. So what is this business of you coming to tell the party leader that we want, sisi tunataka kusikizwa, kwa hii chama sisi hatusikizwi? Amsikizwi kwa sababu hamna kitu lolote la muhimu la kusema. Jambo la muhimu la kusema mnafaa mseme katika the floor of parliament. Some of you have never brought bills on the floor of parliament. When crucial bills are being brought on the floor, you don't show up, or you vote according to your stomachs. So your party leaders don't trust you. They know that you are leeches. They know that you are ticks who suck from them. They know that you people only hang around them because of the benefits that come from you being around them. And so while, I'm talking about just the reality of what's going on in political parties. Over time, there's the ideals, and we can talk about those ideals. All political parties should listen, but to be listened to, you have to be worth being listened to. And your listenership. NTV is listened to because you've had your listenership. People trust you over the years. You've demonstrated. But when people out here have not demonstrated anything, then they're out saying that they want to be listened to. On what account? Your job, your role of oversight. In fact, you go to their constituencies and walipotea Nairobi. Ni watu walipotea Nairobi, wanatuma tu pesa za matanga when things happen in the village. And so sorry. Just to cut that long story short, listen, I've gone on this rant because some of these people really annoy me. That political parties, the reality in Kenya is we don't have this multi-party system. We have a tribal party system. And the tribal party system does not give us what we need. If we need food, shelter, clothing, these political parties don't give us those things. They don't give us even what we want. Sometimes we want land. I know it's a thing that many Kenyans want. Political parties don't give us those things. Political parties in this country give us who they want. They give us who they want, not even who we want. It is the political parties who determine who gets the nomination. So essentially, they are the ones who give us who they want, and then we choose that person that these political parties want. What has resulted in that is that we become disillusioned and apathetic to the political scene. Because it's like you elect the same monkeys to the same forest to sit on the same trees. It's just that every 5 years, maybe they change the position. The position that they were in 5 years ago is not one they were in. But it's the same monkeys in the same trees, and political parties have not demonstrated, in my opinion, that they have what it takes to clearly, people have said they don't have ideologies, they don't have, and I agree with all that. But we don't just need ideologies. They have to be if I look at all the political parties from UDA to Jubilee to ODM, I cannot tell how many card-carrying members, membership paying that they have.
Waliambiwa na UDA, at least waliambiwa na rais itabidi walipe, my friend.
I know, but it will be interesting to see how many people pay. Because what are you getting from what am I getting from this political party that I should pay?
All right, let me bring in Nudin.
UDA, you look like you're wearing
That's orange. maybe it's a combination. There's orange, there's green. I'm a balance. Kama mimi. I'm a balance. Nudin, oh God. You said Parliament is dead.
Very true.
Yes, and you also said these guys have no business going to bend the knee at State House because they're the ones who appropriate monies, right, for development. But need the relationship be adversarial?
You see,
I mean, if somebody is doing a good thing, why should we fight them? I mean, you laud it and you support. If it is good for your constituents, why fight it?
here's the thing. No one should ever lie to you that a meeting with the president by those parliamentarians is purely development. It's political, and we have to be honest with one another. You see, the president is on record saying how he's arranging himself, anajipanga, as rightfully says, and that Raila won't even have agents in 2027. And you'd be a stranger in Jerusalem not to see the inroads he's trying to make. Now, my issue with Parliament, that's why I say it's dead. I'll ask you a simple question. When you watch proceedings, most of the time, when hotted bills are there, like let's take the finance bill, those who are in Azimio that were meant to be in that house raise amendments, hyper amendments, and try and marshal and make that so-called bill they say they don't want to fail. Most of them were not there. Some either traveled, some allegedly were told were paid by the Osoro, then he changed his mind.
Soup.
Osoro said that walikunywa supu. And then he changed it and said hawakunywa supu. And then when it came they were still doing maandamano. During the next maandamano, those who were absent were the ones who were on top of vehicles, saying, "Uyu Ruto, tutafanya hii." Bro, madam, your office is Parliament. Now when you come to rant with me on the street, how are you helping me? You might as well resign. Now you take over the street, I go to Parliament. Because if you don't understand your scope, that is the problem. And that is why I said, for them it's more or less about interests. He talked about how they use Parliament, they use political parties to get certain seats. You know, our politics most of the time use and dump. For those who are saying that headline, tunahepa Raila, they've given reasons, but there's one major reason hawajapeana. Najua ni gani? Njaa. And that is it. Because where they are going, there's some greasing, you get. There's some soup. So at the end of the day, you look at the scenario, Kidi just talked about the problems we're having, and he said KANU has some of the problems we have are based on KANU. The truth of the matter is that the politicians we have today, or those who are in high offices, are children of KANU. So all they know is what their father taught them, that is KANU. So they'll continue cannibalizing other political parties. So as we sit here and ask ourselves, what is the problem with the political parties? The problem is that they are owned, as you rightfully asked. Number two, there's always this line, he forgot to add, respect the party leader. Respect the party line. That's where the chorus comes in, the Nganya thing. Because at the end of the day, they don't have a thinking of their own. I'll give you a very good example. During the BBI clamor, this bill was sent to county governments. There are those county governments that, the county assemblies that didn't even interrogate that thing. Some were even sleeping. When they wake up for voting, yes, and it passes. Ukuru Court had Punguza Mizigo that Raila later called Punguza Gunia. He went to those assemblies trying to educate them what he's trying to talk about. They couldn't wait for him to get to the last full stop. No. So at the end of the day, that is the party line, the party position. So it brings about a scenario where Article 38 talks about we can own, participate, but it's only in paper. Because at the end of the day, which of these parties allows us to audit their accounts? And they're funded by taxpayers. They give us account books, but can they give you access? people talk about the wrangles in Jubilee. Aside from the wrangles in Jubilee, there's a money factor. There's money that is still pending in the accounts. And there are some allegations that some amount was released the other day. So you get to understand, it's more or less beyond just seats that they get. There's money, and then there's power, and then there's selfish interest. Now, there's something Kidi called a kiosk. It is very true. Most of these political parties are for negotiation tactics. Because our politics is more or less, unakuja na nini? So I'm coming with a party, and this party has this member of parliament. This party is in this, as he says, this region. And that's a sad reality. So unless we move away from that, we'll be sitting here every other time complaining once other parties like, let's say, the ones that we have now, if they decide to die, courtesy of the party does not be there anymore. Because, you know, the lifespan of these political parties we have depend on the lifespan of the political party. If the political party leader retires or is no longer there, those parties go away.
Okay.
And even if they stay, they become like the Independence Party or like PNU. They are there by name, courtesy of history.
Okay.
But relevance and touch is zero. So we have to interrogate issues of political parties, but as we do that, we look at it in a holistic manner in that, like you rightfully said, those who feel like, why should I be paying to be in a political, why should I pay as a member if I gain nothing from the political party? If I'm a young person and the only thing they can give me is they open the party, they launch it, and they open a youth wing on Nambi and Oko. So your duty is to be branded, to be running up and down in the streets, to be chanting. Your duty is to brand the party. But when the party wants to have a serious conversation, be it via neck, even if they give you a slot and they give one person, they look at, out of all of you, who's the one we can bulldoze in that neck? They'll pick the lightest one. So that when they have a discussion, they tell you, ngojeni hapo kidogo, we are coming. They close the door. That is how it is. And that is how you look at the young people feel disillusioned. And they ask themselves, how do we penetrate? You can't penetrate, but people will tell you, if you want to join politics, join a political party that stifles your growth. So you find a scenario where even if they will promote a certain number of young people, they'll promote those they feel can promote their agenda.
All right.
But those who will ask hard questions will never see the light of day.
All right, Gashri, have the last word on this subject. The balance between conscience, freedom of conscience, and towing the political party line. And I remember we had this conversation with Jim India when we were discussing this topic earlier. Esther Passaris says she voted her conscience on the Finance Act. Her party fined her for not towing the party line. She's among the few who actually showed up from the Azimio side of things to actually cast her ballot. So as Kenyans, what do we want? Do we say, because you're saying, Jim tells us you're only elected because you ran on this ticket. But then you're also the same ones who are saying, why are MPs not fighting some of these measures in the House in terms of protecting us, their constituents? Do we want to have our cake and eat it?
Okay. And let me begin by saying that I'm very proud of Esther Passaris. That was very bold of her. You know, she's the women rep Nairobi. Nairobi is a country that has a burgeoning number of homeless Kenyans. And the numbers continue to increase every day. The crisis continues to expand in this country, in this county specifically. So I'm very proud of her. But then that is the sad reality of being a member of a political party and having a conscience. So on the one hand, you want to use this vehicle, or you want to use this space, this opportunity you've gotten to do what is right for Kenyans, to serve your people. But there is also the agenda of the political party. And if you do not toe the line, then the sad reality is there are punitive measures, very tough consequences, okay? Now, for as long as we continue to see that in this country, we're never really going to move forward in the political space. Take South Africa, for instance, the ANC. We have seen the ANC recall 2 presidents for allegations of abuse of office, corruption allegations, nepotism, whatnot. And that has, in a way, ensured that the ANC, for all its flaws as a political vehicle, has been able to not only bolster unity within the country, but also have faith with the majority of South Africans. Now, our reality in Kenya is, like everyone here has said, our political parties are specifically functioning machines. It is supposed to move you from one point to another, and more often than not, it is a lobbying or a negotiation vehicle, okay, from an ethnocentric point of view. Hawa ndi watu naleta, this is where I come from, these are the numbers we have from our region, we're going to support you, but we also want, this is what we want. There's a give and take, okay? So I think the only solution here, given now that we have the Political Parties Fund coming through from the ORPP, we have the Political Parties Tribunal that is very robust and has been very supportive of especially young people and special interest groups within political parties where you feel conflicted or bulldozed by party leadership when you're trying to push for agendas, you're trying to do something autonomously within the political party, I would ask stakeholders, the Office of Registrar of Political Parties, the Political Parties Tribunal, to please continue creating awareness. Okay, I'm not going to be very combative about that. Just ask them, because there's a lot out there to learn. We have the the disputes resolution within political parties that is now enshrined in the Political Parties Act. We have all these avenues where people can learn, can gain capacity, and foster and build political parties in this country.
All right, so we will conclude the conversation there. Sorry, my director, Jackson Dirangu. Hi, Jackson. Was telling me that we need to conclude the conversation here. We've had in studio Kidi Mwaga, convener, Interparties Youth Forum, Jim India political analyst, Rudin Hugai, advocate of the High Court, certified professional mediator, and Gashri Kariuki, who had the last word. Sorry for throwing you off at the end there. She is not only an advocate of the High Court, director of Stawi KE Kenya, as well as head of programs, Interparties Youth Forum. Thank you very much for being here this morning. Thank you for tuning in. Coming up, we have Jackson. You said what? It's not the usual. Oh, so it's the usual. Oh, okay. All right. We have the morning fix coming up next.